few years ago, we reviewed At the Gates of Setu by Nile, and it was an album that was coming off of a string of great and successful discs by the band, and it was one that featured a little bit of a mix that just seemed to off-put a lot of individuals, and as a result, the overall body of work suffered a great deal. So here in 2015, with the release of What Should Not Be Unearthed, there was kind of actually, for the first time, something for Nile to prove to all of us, and it was the fact that, hopefully, Setu is just a one-album fluke. Now, some people really like At the Gates of Setu, and really, I think some of the problems are a bit nitpicky, to be perfectly blunt, but it was something that affected me as well, so this is one of my 10 most anticipated discs of this portion of the year, primarily because I wanted to see if that was truly just a one-album thing, or if it was a sound that they were aiming for and wanted to continue with. Well, about a month ago, we heard Call to Destruction for the first time, and it was definitely nothing like At the Gates of Setu. It was a freaking blistering, brutal track, one that absolutely held nothing back. And I think it sort of set a lot of minds at ease that that was just sort of an experiment that sort of went wrong and just didn't have the result that was perhaps intended. So now we have the entire 10-song, 50-minute affair at our hands, and we get to bear witness to the brutality of Nile once again, and we get to see what this full album has to offer. What Should Not Be Unearthed is actually a very apt title for this disc, not to mention a very apt theme that we were able to see for the first time in Call to Destruction. It's all about the destruction of a lot of priceless artifacts from ancient civilizations that's going on in the Middle East, and it was so bad that they had to place a disclaimer prior to the Call to Destruction video that indicated that these were not the views of blah 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 blah, it's all about this. And yeah, one of those things that you do whenever you want to make sure that people don't try to come after your ass simply because you're talking with a bit of reality, and some folks can't exactly, deal with that. So to put it lightly, this is an album that features two things, and while Nile has the propensity and the ability to be both of these things and have in the past, it's something that feels a lot more real on this album than it has on prior ones. They are brutal, which we all know that Nile has the capability to be, but they seem also on this disc to be exceptionally, exceptionally angry. If you remember some of the famous gaskets that I've blown throughout the years, think about that with a real political purpose or just a real purpose in general, and you'll throw a death metal styling in that's in the vein of Nile's just absolute brutal destruction, and you'll kind of understand without listening kind of what I'm talking about. This is a very angry album. It's one that it can descend at times onto portions of lyrical rants that just seem to really spell out the turmoil that's really going on due to the research of the band themselves, not to mention their own personal views on the matter, and it just really spews into this rhetoric of disdain and just absolute demand that something be done about it. And it's certainly one where the Egypt theme 100% still plays a forefront role, not only in the song titles themselves, but also within the lyricism and also within the overall body of what this is going for. God damn. Anger prevails on this disc, and the sinister snarl on this really goes from a very deep guttural growl all the way to the traditional vocals, the more audible vocals that we know Nile from for now about 15 years. It's certainly a sight to really listen to. It's not really a sight, but you know what I'm saying. It's a sight to behold. It's something to hear and really marvel at, considering this is a band that seems as though they are at their darkest and at their meanest, and that fierce ferocity really, yeah. The ferocity of this album just really seems to be on a brand new level, on a brand new scale, and really crossing a threshold that perhaps they have never touched before. Because of that, this is a disc that also flows exceptionally nicely. It's one that doesn't need to deviate all of that much, but does so. Consider the very final track, To Walk Forth from Flames Unscathed, how the pacing and the tone of this seems to slow down a little bit in order to give us something to really write home to whenever this album completes. And whenever you can sort of compare that to Call to Destruction, which started this disc off with such a furious pace and such an angered tempo, It's certainly a duality that is impressive, to say the least. I really enjoy the fact that on tracks such as In the Name of Amun, there is just fierce lyricism that is being spewed forth, and the music, of course, the absolute chaos that swirls around Nile tracks to begin with, only serves to further the destruction and further sort of the corrosion of the sanity and of the good graces of the band themselves as they slowly descend into absolute hatred. It kind of reminds me of what would happen if you were a mummy, or if the band was a mummy or a buried individual within these areas that are being affected by some of these unearthings, and they have the curse, of course, within their veins, and they start to witness what's around them because of their own mind's eye, and then as the curse becomes something that is coming true, you just see the explosion and sort of feel the supernatural power that is this band. And I know that it sounds a little flighty, and maybe you've been watching one too many mummy movies, but it really is kind of the truth. The snarl on this album certainly surpasses just about anything that Nile has done within their career. Now, does that work for the band? Is it something where that type of snarl gives them something more, or is it something that takes something away? Well, it's a fucking easy assessment, ladies and gentlemen. Based around the insanity of the musicianship that you have swirling behind you, the Egyptian-themed death metal, and based around the true insanity of the vocalization between the two sides that you really get from this band, from the very lowest of the lows to the mid-range to the absolute shriek, it's definitely one that opts to give the band something more to play with. And this level of real disdain just gives them another tool to really cause this death metal destruction to go up another notch. It actually gives it a whole hell of a lot more. Remember whenever we heard Kafir for the first time, off of, I think it was Those Whom the Gods Detest, back in 2010. Remember how impressed we were by that? This is something where that level of carnal insanity has now been amplified about 5 to 7 times, maybe even 10 times, in order to produce something that has even more of that bite to it. And it works very well for them because it gives all of that swirling ridiculosity just a lot more meaning. And it kind of drives the point home, and it feels like a true death metal album. It feels very real, and the anger feels very real. It doesn't feel manufactured just in order to sort of fulfill a certain stigma. This is a great album. Really great album. Great 50 minutes of music. Flowed absolutely beautifully. You live the destruction and the mental destruction as well of this band with this album. You feel the anger, your blood starts to boil, and you want to cry out the same way during some of these moments. You marvel at the absolute insanity. You marvel at some of the rhetoric. You really feel very close with this disc, even though you may not necessarily be all that close to the material itself. And that kind of connection is a good thing. It's a strong representation. Nile does a great job in order to do that. And for that reason, what a turnaround from At the Gates of Sethu. 88 out of 100. You got to pick up this album. You have to check this out. You have to really embody yourself within this. Nile's not a band that's necessarily for everybody. But for those of you who do enjoy this group, just have at it. You have just gotten a gift from Ra. Sure. What did you guys think about this disc? What did you guys think about What Should Not Be Unearthed by Nile? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below. Are you satisfied with this disc after At the Gates of Sethu? Is this one where you prefer Sethu a little bit more, or you just don't like this album? Let me know. I want to know what you think. And, of course, we're going to be talking about a lot of other great albums this week from bands such as Soilwork and Motorhead and Ahab. Man, it's a great week for metal. So you're going to want to hit that subscribe button that's right down there as well. That way you can get all of the reviews for those albums also. I'm coverkillernation. I don't know. Usually I say something snappy here, but I think I'm just going to go listen to the new Nile again. It's that good. You should check it out too. Later.